everyone, it's Hayes, and in today's video we're going to be talking about my favourite character from the whole of Miraculous Ladybug. I'm kidding, it's Felix. I'm not his biggest fan, I don't keep that a secret, it's just the way it is. And we're going to be talking about why he is the worst written character in the whole show. Of course, this is just my opinion. You may think someone else is terribly written. For example, Chloe. I think Chloe started off pretty well up until about the end of Miraculous. And after that, I don't really understand some of the decisions they've made for her. I don't really know, but for this video we're going to be focusing on Felix. And to me, Felix serves one purpose, which is to move the plot forward. And at this point you're all going to be like, oh my god, Hayes, he's a great character, he moves the plot forward, what a weird thing to criticise. But to that I would say is that Felix, every time he moves the plot forward, it's largely inorganic. It only happens, seemingly, because the writer's a bit like, we've kind of written ourselves into a mess here, we're a bit stuck, so let's just get Felix from London and make him do something that doesn't really make sense, give him a leap of logic that no one could really make. To me, I know I'm not the only person who thinks this, Felix is not really a character, he's basically just a plot device to advance things when the writing team haven't planned things well enough. Although saying that, part of me thinks that they do intentionally plan for Marinette to do next to nothing and have Felix come in and crack things wide open, which is, they make odd decisions all the time. This isn't just the only one of them, they make them all the time, constantly. So anyway, let's go episode by episode of Felix's appearances and discuss why he is terribly written. So, Felix's debut episode. Yikes. The amount of people I have seen defending him for trying to kiss Ladybug, and the amount of people who are defending him by saying, oh well, he's trying to get back at Adrian, it was deserved, and I'm like, there is no reason, ever, to justify assaulting someone, so stop trying to defend him. Stop. No. Stop. And I think that the writers were aware when they wrote this episode that Felix, who is an anti-hero really up until the end of Emotion, that they were eventually going to try and redeem him, and we will talk about that badly done redemption in a few minutes, don't worry. So it certainly is an odd choice for them to make, to have him attempt to do something really horrible to Ladybug when they were gonna redeem him. So anyway, other than that, I understand why he's in this episode. Largely, he's there to celebrate the anniversary of his aunt being missing for a year. What a weird thing to have a family get together for, but okay, it's kind of like a bit of a party. Alright, but it is odd that Adrian has just never mentioned his cousin prior to this episode, who in this episode we also find out they were quite close to each other previously. So that's fun. So while his presence is a little jarring in this episode, I don't mind him suddenly cropping up here. I don't think his writing is too bad in his debut episode, but I do intensely dislike him in this episode. And while the attempted assault decision is certainly a strange one and also a bad one to make, I don't think he's that terribly written in his debut. Felix's next outing is in season 4, episode 9, affectionately known as Daddy Aggressed, by just me and all of you, no one else calls it that.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it.
Now, in this episode, Felix has had a bit of a personality transplant. He's a lot nicer because apparently he's got over the rage he felt in his previous episode about Adrian. But even though he is nicer, still not his biggest fan. But after this episode, I did start to understand the growing sentiment towards him, basically since he didn't try to assault anyone in this episode. However, this episode is where his bad writing starts, where he becomes just a plot device. In his debut there isn't really plot device stuff, but in this one it's kind of where it starts. It just doesn't stop from here really. So it's where the bad writing starts. So let me refresh your memory, okay? So they're at the party, Felix escapes Adrian's room and goes to Gabriel's office. I'm a bit unsure why he goes there, to be honest, other than he sees Gabriel go in there. It's just a bit of a weird sequence of events. Like I said, it doesn't seem to happen organically. It's just Felix goes there because why not? There's no real reason for it, but anyway. He reaches out to Emily's portrait, although I don't think it's to get into the lair, he just looks like he's he misses his auntie or something. And Senti Baby tries to rile him up, and Felix just accuses him of being Shadow Daddy, may he rest in peace. Only after, this is the only evidence he has, after seeing 2 brooches at the start of the episode, and he concludes that they must be Miraculous. He just knows they are. Even though he's been around Adrian who wears one and he has no idea it's one. He also meets Marinette in this episode as a waiter, granted, but it's still her, she's still got her Miraculous in. And he has no idea that either of them are wearing Miraculouses. So why does he just know that Gabriel's 2 brooches are Miraculous? You know, it just could be a brooch. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a magical piece of jewellery. You know, like, where is the logic for one? I don't mind Felix finding out, but where is the logic following on from seeing 2 brooches and then accusing him? There needs to be some more evidence to flesh that out in the middle. So Felix is like, I know you're Shadow Daddy, may he rest in peace. And Gabriel Babes is like, no I'm not, but I could snap you out of existence anyway. Which confirms he is indeed Shadow Daddy, may he rest in peace. So the first time I watched this episode, I was like, oh yeah, Felix knows that Gabriel is Shadow Daddy because he does the thing where he rips his pants, then Senti Gabe has a pant rip but real Gabe doesn't, even though real Gabe could have just noticed the rip and changed his pants. Or maybe Gabriel only has 1 pair of black pants. I don't know. However, Felix, mate, buddy, you didn't even need to do that because Gabriel told you to his face. By saying he could snap you and you're a Senti monster, he knows you're a Senti monster, that confirms at the very least he has the Peacock Miraculous, which confirms he is Shadow Daddy because Hawk Daddy is using the peacock at the minute with the butterfly. So you didn't even need to go to all of that effort. So like I mentioned before, I don't have that big of a problem with Felix knowing who Gabriel is, okay? But why does Felix wait until Risk and Strike Back to do anything about it? The reason could be, well, Gabriel could have snapped him in the meantime, but Gabriel could also have snapped Felix in Strike Back when he does decide to act, so that seems a bit strange. And that also doesn't stop Felix from telling other people Gabriel's identity in the meantime. Gabriel wouldn't necessarily know it was Felix. Could have been Natalie, it could have been someone else who found out his identity that he wasn't even aware of. For example, Lila. He has no idea Lila knows who he is. Therefore, the reason, well, he could be snapped if he acted prior to that doesn't really seem to add up. But Gabriel is aware in season 4 that Felix knows who he is, since he tells Felix he can snap him. Yet Gabriel doesn't seem to be bothered for the rest of the season about Felix. Like, Felix could turn around and tell anyone who Shadow Daddy is, and it doesn't even seem to cross Gabriel's mind. And further than that, for all of season 5, Felix is still aware who Monarch Daddy is, and Gabriel is aware that Felix knows it too. It was definitely confirmed once and for all at the end of Strike Back that, yep, Felix knows, and Gabriel knows that Felix knows. Yet again though, he's not bothered by it. Like, this teenage boy could betray you and tell the whole city your identity, and now he has the peacock, he has no reason not to keep Gabriel's secret. Like, if I was Gabriel in season 5, I would be so paranoid, oh my god, I'd be so paranoid about Felix telling anyone. But he doesn't even seem to have, like, it just hasn't crossed his mind, doesn't seem to have crossed his mind that Felix could do that. Why wasn't Gabriel taking measures to keep his nephew quiet? It doesn't really make sense. Felix just gets away with knowing Gabriel's identity under the guise of, I don't know, being snapped. Well, that stops being a problem in Strike Back. Hurting Adrian if his cousin finds out. Maybe that is the reason, but it's never discussed in the show. I really don't know. He just gets away with knowing, when really Gabriel should be really, you know, paranoid about something like that, since Felix isn't trustworthy. He doesn't like Gabriel. He's not like Natalie and Gabriel, where I know their relationship breaks down in season 5, but I don't believe, unless something really awful happened, that Natalie would betray Gabriel. Whereas Felix absolutely definitely would, and he does in Representation, so I don't get why Gabriel wasn't taking measures to ensure his nephew didn't tell anyone his identity. So now we have part 1 of the season 4 finale, and Felix once again rocks up to advance the plot. He has no real reason to be chilling in Adrian's bedroom. It is literally like the writers forgot about him, and now he's just here to take the plot somewhere, because the plot of the season of Ladybug and Cat Noir and their relationship breaking up was largely resolved in Kuroneko. So Felix is once again just here for the sake of plot convenience. So while Felix being in the finale is bloody random in my opinion, I do think his motivation is good, although there was absolutely zero guarantee he would get what he got in the episode, but it seems to go all to plan even though he couldn't predict any of it. Once again showing the plot convenience surrounding him. But like I said, I do think his motivation in this episode is really good. He dislikes Gabriel and Ladybug for harming the Senti monsters, so he wants to get the Peacock Miraculous to protect them and also himself. Although the whole speech he gives in the sewers in Pretention about Senti life seems odd, considering he makes a projector in representation and then kills it as soon as he's finished with it. So, However, in Strike Back, there is no regret for the decisions that Felix makes for the actions he takes. I know he is quite stoical, he doesn't tend to express many emotions, but he still possesses them. As we see, he's quite happy when he's with Kagami. He gets really upset at the end of Emotion when he put the whole city in danger and had to destroy Red Moon. He doesn't really care, to be honest. He cares more about himself and the Senti monster, not anyone else. He doesn't really face any consequences for his actions. Almost like, oh my god, a Mary Sue, the actual Mary Sue of Miraculous. Not Marinette, it's actually Felix. Felix is portrayed all the time as being perfect. Despite the obvious flaws he does possess, he can still do no wrong, even though he is very flawed. And the only time he really gets punished is in Emotion, when he has to destroy Red Moon. It's the only mistake he actually really admits to. Anyway, back to Strike Back. Felix very easily could have spoken to Ladybug, because unlike Gabriel, I do believe she would have listened to reason and told her about protecting Senti life, and I do think she definitely would have listened to him, if not also agreed, because first of all, she thought Formidable was Adrian, and also secondly, in Ladybug, both her and Cat Noir were really affected by Sentibug's death, so I definitely think if she didn't agree, she would at the very least have listened to Formidable. But instead, Felix runs off to the mansion and lets Gabriel win instead. And that's his only real function in Strike Back, to let Gabriel win, to progress the plot. He's forgot about for 90% of the season, just to be brought in so Gabriel can win. That is his only function at the end of season 4. A plot device to make Gabriel win. So now we have multiplication, and we're just going to ignore this episode because he has like, what, 2 lines? If that. I have no problem with Felix's writing in this episode. I think they did a great job in multiplication. So, Emotion. This is arguably the episode where Felix's massively undeserved redemption starts. The bloke snaps everyone, or at the very least everyone in Paris, out of existence, apart from himself, Adrian, Kagami, and in his opinion Marinette, but then he ends up snapping Ladybug, so not Marinette. And at first he doesn't really care what he's done. He does eventually bring everyone back because he messed it up so badly, and he does start to seem regretful. However, as revealed in Pretention, he only starts to change because he has feelings for Kagami, not because of the chaos he ensued and any regrets associated with it, which he states at the end of Emotion when he kills Red Moon. He doesn't mention Kagami at all, so at the end of Emotion it seems like he's starting to change because he realises he made a mistake, but then in Pretension, the episode straight after, he only seems to change because he has feelings for Kagami. The two things aren't mentioned again. Kagami isn't mentioned in Emotion, and whatever is going on with the emotions he feels from Emotion isn't mentioned in Pretension. It doesn't add up since they're not mentioned. Again, he's given different motivations in 2 episodes for like the same thing. It's bad writing, especially since they are giving him a redemption. It needs to add up, the math needs to add up, but Felix's arc just isn't mathing. It doesn't make complete sense. So I don't mind Felix being redeemed. I don't mind anyone being redeemed in the show. Chloe, Gabriel, whoever, as long as it's done well. But Felix's redemption starts without him apologising really for anything apart from what happens in Emotion. Doesn't apologise for what happened back in his debut, doesn't apologise for what he did in season 4, both of which were awful events, didn't apologise for it, and he still hasn't. Like, by the time we get to Recreation, Felix is at the pool party, and then we see him with all the Miraculous team, and he hasn't apologised for anything he has done apart from what he did in Emotion. And even then, I do strongly feel like he only apologised in Emotion because it went wrong, not because he was actually regretful. Like, if it had gone right and Marinette was still there, I don't think he would have reversed it. I think he would have left it the same if Marinette hadn't been snapped, or hadn't snapped Ladybug. I think he only changed it because of Marinette. If she was there, I don't think he would have changed it. I don't believe he was fully regretful. So he hasn't apologised for anything outside of Emotion, but he still gets a redemption. The math isn't mathin'. Like, I don't know why they decided to do what they did with Chloe. I still don't get that. However, I do think her redemption up until the end of Miraculous was written really, really well. Felix's redemption was written so poorly because his attitude doesn't really change. He does become a better person by the end of season 5, but all that development he has pretty much between Pretention and Representation happens off screen, and his attitude stays the same. He thinks he can get whatever he wants without consequences. For me, Felix doesn't necessarily become a good person. I think he becomes a better person, maybe not a good person, but he rather just changes alliances. Like, there's a line to one of my favourite TV shows, used to be Sherlock, I think from the 2nd series. One of the lines Sherlock says is, I may be on the side of the angels, but don't think for 1 second I am one of them. Sherlock, arguably, isn't a very good person. He just has decided, for whatever reason, to help good people. He could most definitely one day cross over and do the same things for bad people, but he does it for good people. That's why Felix is an anti-hero. He is in the middle with his own agenda, and he serves whichever side, the good side or the bad side, depending what they can do for him. So to me, he doesn't really change much as a person. He just more of changes his alliance because his attitudes are the same. He thinks he can get away with doing whatever he wants without any consequences. So, in Pretension, the redemption continues. We see a bit more of a mellow Felix because he has a crush on Kagami. Not necessarily because he really regrets what happened in Emotion. And if he hadn't apologised the way he did and talked about how it was a mistake and was so regretful and then never mentions it again, in theory, I don't mind him changing and becoming a better person because he has a crush on a girl. I think that is fine. If the person you have feelings for makes you want to be a better person, then I am happy for you. However, any developmental effects Kagami has on him isn't shown. It would be far more effective and also make for better writing if we are shown how he changes. So Pretension is episode 19. Representation, Felix's next appearance, is episode 24, and at some point between those 2 episodes, obviously off screen because we don't see it, Kagami is able to make Felix see what he is doing is wrong, and that they need to tell Ladybug who Monarch Daddy is, and why Felix did what he did, especially at the end of season 4. Cool, great. So show us. I won't go over show don't tell in this video, I did that enough in my reverse video, but showing is so much more effective. Like, how did Kagami make him see what he was doing was wrong? Why did Felix decide Kagami could know who Monarch Daddy was? Show us. I swear to God, it would be so much more effective, but doing it like this, it is a poor writing decision. Part of me is like, do I really believe Felix is a better person in Representation? Because I haven't seen that change, he just comes in as a slightly different person in Representation. I'm not sure I believe he's truly changed for the better and for a long time. He could revert back at any time. Like I said about the previous episode, Felix just changes alliances. He doesn't necessarily change as a person. If he initially started on the good side but Kagami was on the bad side and he still had feelings for her, I definitely think he would easily cross back. And now it is time for my favourite episode. We're not here to roast it again, worry not, we did that enough in the other video. So in this episode, Felix reveals to Marinette Monarch Daddy's identity, and once again it seems like it's done out of plot convenience because of how it was badly written. We don't see any character development between Pretention and Representation. It does look like it's come out of nowhere. I have no doubt Kagami helped him become a better person and see some of the error of his ways, but because we don't see it, I'm like, can I trust it? Like, what's to say he's not going to start helping Lila next season if it's in his best interest? absolutely nothing. It just looks like it has come out of nowhere. Felix has definitely developed, but it's all happened off screen and it really has no impact at all. For example, someone who has been through a lot of development that has a lot more impact, if you look at Gabriel in season 1, he's a very stoical, unavailable father, and then season 2 you actually see he's quite evil, but that he still really loves his son, and then season 5 he's just gone over the top, crazy, becomes more abusive, is just absolutely horrible. That development, even though I do disagree with trying to redeem an abuser right at the end of the season after he's died, but that development was really good and had so much more impact because we saw how he progressively changed. For Felix in Pretention to be kind of sort of still on the fence as an anti-hero, still arguably bad but maybe has some good traits, and then to come in Representation, here for the good guys, ready to fight on the good side. It doesn't have as much impact because it all happens off screen. He's just a writing device to deliver plots, so it's like the writers don't really value having him on screen to show that development like they do with the other characters, because Felix isn't really a character in his own right. He's just there to deliver clues and hints, or just to outright crack wide open the plot himself without letting anyone else in on his plan. And then finally, we have Recreation. Don't get me started on this episode. Okay, I swear to God, what were you doing, Felix, in Recreation? You didn't come to the fight, but you did come to the pool party. Like, they overuse this one character to progress the plot and then swiftly forget about him. Like, do the writers have selective amnesia when it comes to Felix? I don't get it. So in conclusion, besties, I hope you can all see that with the exception of Multiplication and his debut Felix, is that Felix's role in the show is purely a plot device to advance the plot when the writers get stuck, but they do it really inorganically by giving him leaps in logic. He literally possesses information that only the audience should know, such as knowing Gaby Baby was Shadow Daddy, may he rest in peace, with zero evidence. Gabriel only won in Strike Back because of Felix's plot armour. He faced no consequences for what he did and got rewarded with getting a girlfriend and now being a hero. I don't get it. It's almost like the writers have decided that Marinette or Gabriel or whoever can't win without him. Like, why don't they let Marinette investigate? So for example, they know in Multiplication she finds out when they go to Miss Tsurugi after the Akuma attack. They know she's used a mouse, but they can't see the Miraculous on her anywhere, so they know something's going on, they're being transmitted somehow, and in Deflagration she sees the rings when her and Monarch Daddy fights. But the writers don't allow her to do anything about it. The writers instead choose to allow Felix to make random leaps in logic to save the day, or to reveal everything he knows, or some of what he knows, to save the day. And it's just really poor writing and also just really inorganic storytelling. There are other ways to progress the plot in Miraculous, but also in anything, that are much better and seem much more organic. A great example of this from the show is Alia in episodes like Optogami and Sentibulba. In Optogami she ends up putting herself in danger, which causes the events of Sentibulba to happen, and while she's Rena furtive for the rest of the season, it feels like an organic progression, and Alia's character develops due to it. She's keeping secrets from Nino, which also leads to the organic progression of the episode Rocketeer, and it also develops her relationship with Marinette. So they are obviously more than capable of organic storytelling, but they just don't do it. They just let Felix find out everything and then he reveals said confidential information with zero threat from the person he found it out from in the first place. He just reveals it when Marinette or whoever needs to know said information. He just seems to be the writer's way out when they get themselves into a situation with the plot which they can't solve. I don't think he's very well written. I think he could very easily become a well written character if, you know, they put some actual effort into it. But right now it's just like, why are you making the decisions you're making with Felix? I don't get it. He just comes in when the writers are stuck with the plot. Because for whatever reason, Marinette, Adrian and Alia, even though they're all meant to be really clever, just can't solve any mystery even though they have all the clues right in front of them. So anyway, besties, that's what I think of Felix's writing in the show. I am less than impressed with it. It's just bad and inorganic and poor quality, and I don't like it very much, as I'm sure you've been able to tell. So I'd love to know what you think, besties, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!